College to career, what they don't teach you about the workplace. You studied hard, you got your degree, maybe you even rehearsed for interviews, and then you walked into your first real job and thought, what is happening here? Nobody told you about the unwritten rules. Nobody explained what being a team player actually means in practice. If the workplace has felt confusing, exhausting, or just plain unfair, this video is for you. Hi, I'm Jacqueline from ASD Life Coaches, where we help autistic adults build real-world skills, independence, and confidence through life skills coaching. And today, we're talking about one of the biggest transitions you'll ever face, going from college into a new career. Here's what we're going to break down today. First, why the workplace feels so different from school and why that's especially hard for autistic brains. Second, I want to give you 2 real-world scenarios that a lot of our clients have lived through. And third, you need 4 concrete strategies you can start using immediately to navigate workplace culture with a lot more confidence. Let's get into it. College, for all its stress, has a structure that actually works really well for a lot of autistic brains. You get a syllabus. You know exactly what's expected on what you know and what you produce. The rules are written down. If you follow them, you succeed. The workplace, almost the opposite. At work, a huge portion of how you're evaluated has nothing to do with your actual output. It has to do with something called workplace social currency, and nobody hands you a syllabus for it. Here's what I mean. In most workplaces, there are 2 sets of rules. The official rules, things like your job description, your deadlines, your policies. And then there are the unofficial rules, the unspoken expectations about how you communicate, how visible you make yourself, and how you respond to feedback in the moment, and how you manage relationships with coworkers and supervisors. For autistic adults, this gap can feel enormous, and here's why. Your brain is wired to prioritize clarity, logic, and consistency. You tend to take language literally, which means your manager might say, just let me know if you need anything, and your brain might not register that as a genuine standing offer, or you might take it so literally that you reach out in ways that feel unexpected to them. You may also be operating with a higher cognitive load than your neurotypical coworkers. Things like open office noise, ambiguous feedback, unclear expectations, and constant text switching use up enormous mental bandwidth for your brain, leaving less energy for the social performance the workplace often silently demands. Executive functioning differences also play a role. Prioritizing tasks when everything feels equally urgent, managing email tone, reading between the lines in meetings. These aren't things that come automatically, and they were never taught in any classroom. The result, you might be doing excellent work and still being told you're not a culture fit, or that you need to work on communication. And that feedback without context can feel devastating and completely unfair. You are not imagining that gap. It's real, and it has a name: the hidden curriculum of the workplace. Let me give you an example. Let's talk about Marcus. Marcus got a job at a marketing agency right out of college. He was sharp, detail-oriented, and delivered his work early almost every single time. But 6 months in, his manager pulled him aside and he said that he seemed disengaged in team meetings. Marcus was confused. He'd been listening carefully, taking notes, processing everything, but he wasn't nodding along. He wasn't making eye contact regularly. And he wasn't jumping in with verbal affirmations like totally or great idea to his neurotypical teammates. That looked like disinterest, even though Marcus was arguably the most tuned in person in the room. Nobody told Marcus that participation in meetings is partly a performance, not just an information exchange. Here's another example. There's Priya. She started her first job in a tech company and realized her supervisors need feedback in what she called hint language. Instead of saying, this report needs to be shorter, he'd say, I wonder if we could tighten this up a bit. Priya heard that as a mild suggestion, not a direct instruction. She'd nod and move on. The report stayed the same length. After 3 months, her supervisor marked her as resistant to feedback in for review. Priya wasn't resistant. She literally hadn't decoded the message. And that's not a flaw. It's a processing difference that no one accounted for. Here are 4 strategies you can start using now. First, the explicit clarification. What it is, a scripted phrase that you use to turn vague feedback into clear direction. It works because it removes ambiguity without putting you in a position of seeming like you weren't listening. Do this when you receive feedback that feels unclear. Maybe say this: I want to make sure I understand what you're looking for. It's like a certain page count or a certain format. Use this anytime feedback feels vague, indirect, or contradictory. This is professional, not annoying. Most managers actually appreciate the specificity. Another strategy, the visible check-in, where a short scheduled touch point with your manager where you proactively share what you're working on. It works because autistic adults often work in deep focus and produce great work, but that work is invisible until it's done. In workplaces that run on perceived busyness and communication, invisibility gets misread as disengagement. So once a week, even just via email, send a 3-line update. What I worked on this week, what I'm planning for next week, any blockers I need help with from week 1. It sets a tone of reliability, communication before any problems arise. Another strategy, the meeting participation script. A small set of prepared phrases that signal engagement during meetings without requiring you to improvise on the spot. It works because workplace meetings are as much a social ritual as having an information exchange. Having 2 to 3 go-to phrases reduces the cognitive demand of real-time social performance. So try something like, that's a good point. It connects to what we discussed about this. Or I want to make sure I understand. What are we prioritizing, A or B? I'll need a moment to think that through. Can I follow up after the meeting? When to use it? Prepare these scripts before the meeting. You don't need to use all of them. Even one intentional contribution registers as engagement. The 4th strategy, the Unwritten Rules Audit. It's a deliberate process for reverse engineering the unofficial culture of your specific workplace. This works because the HIT curriculum isn't universal. Every workplace has its own version. By actively studying it, you move from reacting to navigating. In your first 30 days, observe and write down the answers to the following questions. When does my manager seem most stressed versus most relaxed? What gets people praised in the office? Speed, thoroughness, creativity, compliance. Which one of those stand out? How do people communicate disagreement? Directly, indirectly, in meetings, or privately? What time do people actually arrive and leave versus when they're supposed to? Start this on day 1, revisit every few months, especially after a new manager or team change. If work has felt harder than it should, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not failing. You are navigating an environment that was not designed with your brain in mind. That is a design problem, not a you problem. These skills are learnable. This navigation is possible, and you deserve a career that actually works for you. If this resonated with you, like and subscribe below. We put out new content all the time for autistic adults building independence and confidence in real life. If you want personalized support navigating work, school, or relationships, visit us at asdlifecoaches.com to learn more about one-on-one coaching. You've got this, and we've got you.